Yeah. It seems by the way that the Gemara was written, the way the Mishnah is written, that it was written at the last possible moment. And I think the answer, the reason because of this, was that there was a Kabbalah from a Rebbe. The person was supposed to cobble something from a Rebbe.
Listen, you're missing for simple information. That's no question. You're missing. I'll tell you in a second. I'll get back to you. That's a Gemara. That's a question. It's answer in the Gemara. It's a question and answer in the Gemara. Hold on. We'll talk about that too. Any other question? I want to see which question. No?
I have one. Explaining the difference between a man's free will and hashgacha proteins, between God knowing what's going to happen and determining what's going to happen, and man's having free will. As I know, but I said...
All right, we'll get back to the second. Let's see, what else? No? Yes?
How do we get Goyish ideas out of our heads?
How do you get Goyish ideas out of our heads? That's a real question. Not a good question. Let's talk about that question. That's a good question.
Can I ask more on that same question?
Yes.
I think it's more than that, but there are a lot of Goyish ideas that are actually Jewish ideas, but they got a lot of Goyish traffic,
Right.
So I kind of like to be able to sift it.
Yeah. First of all, let's go back to the final more clear. What do you mean by Goyish ideas? We should get physics out of our head, math out of our head. That's what you mean. Medicine you should get out of our head. You don't mean that. Let's make that clear, first of all, that we're not talking about chokhmah. We're not talking about knowledge, right? We shouldn't send a rocket to the moon. That's not what we're talking about, right? That's clear, right, Mr. Malmstein? We can't dismiss the achievements of science and technology. That's not what we're talking about. Right? Moshe, we're not talking about that. So what are we talking about? Let me tell you. Life is not science and technology. Science and technology is only one dimension of life. That's not even, the close to the core of what life is all about. The world existed maybe in greater tranquility before there was a rocket on the moon. The human being functioned maybe with a greater truth and a greater creativity before Einstein, before the theory of relativity. With all authentic due respect to the achievements of science, it's an aspect. So we have an air conditioner, so we have computers, so we benefit in greater ways than I just enumerated. But this is not the fullness of life. This is not you don't live life with this. Life you live every day. How you go to sleep, how you get up in the morning, how you relate to your friends, how you relate to your family, how you relate to your wife and children. These are the more real issues of life. This is what we're talking about. How you think, how you relate to yourself. First and foremost, how a person relates to himself. Surprisingly enough, people don't understand that there's a way that There's a healthy and an emistic way. There's a true way how a person has to relate to himself. And the real problem of Asha's question is having goyish attitudes first to yourself. The secular attitudes towards yourself, the beginning of the fall and the destruction and the decay and all of the negative ingredients that we experience today in life begins with this first mistake of taking a secular attitude towards yourself. From there we'll travel to our neighbors, to our friends, to our family. There's a great disparity polaristic of how the secular world looks at the human being and how the Torah looks at a human being. And then from there we'll try and search out how to be careful and avoid taking the higher levels of society. When the sciences began to investigate a human being and to interpret what a human being is, they're reduced to a human being to an animal in the animal kingdom. Fact, you don't know it. Maybe you do know it, those of you that went to universities or colleges, you know it. For pragmatic reasons and scientific purposes, in order to reach the certain definitions and categories, they reduce the human being to an animal. There's a veterinarian that treats cows, and a doctor that treats monkeys, and when they got to what they call the mind of a human being, they treat him like an animal, clinically. This is diametrically, this is the farthest point away from how Torah looks at a human being. You look in Chumash, you look in the Chumash. The functioning, the happiness of a human being, to release his potential, for him to actualize it. Mountains of literature. But it's all, you know, 99 and 44, 100% because of the most recent years, because of the terrible debacle, society's collapse. We are living in a nature of mamish collapse, a total human bankruptcy. I mean, this is no problem. This is no exaggeration. The problem right today is total and absolute, total bankruptcy. I mean, you don't understand what it is. You study anthropology or sociology, you begin to recognize that the backbone of entire civilization, of humanity, is a thing called mishpacha, family. Before the pre-Socratic philosophers, before there was philosophy in the world, you go back to ancient history, there's a common denominator that encircles the whole globe. Mishpacha, family. Philosophers didn't get together and say that you need a family. But there was a concept of a family, and the family was the keli out of their group people. It was the factor with people with strength, with talent, with intelligence, with creative power, came out of the concept of family. The cave is so extensive, it's so all-pervading, that there are families in the family. You give it a sophisticated name, you come with a few gripes and a few that is too cumbersome. What father? You give it a name that in ancient society It was patriarchal. Think. The Churban Arayos. The walls. Whoever has a sense, a social sense, we're living in situations where the walls, the ground under us is shaking, and the walls are crumbling. You take a look in Shulchan Aruch, you open up the Shulchan Aruch. If you don't know how to look at the Shulchan Aruch, the first dinner, I told you a number of times, the first dinner in the morning, you get up, you wash Neckelwasser, a problem, a Magen Avram, and a Taz, and a Machzis a Shekel, and Shalos Teshuvos. Which shoe do you put on first? Those are Jews, they're crazy, they're legalists. With their minutiae, they're crazy, they're insane. There's no way that cause for mirth and criticism. Which shoe you put on first? Which stocking you put on first? Trace the halacha back to the Gemara. And you take the halacha and all the Gemaras and you squeeze it out. And you want to capsulate it, you want to say it in one sentence. What are you talking about? You go and look at the Shulchan Aruch, you're going into the shower. Naturally, you have it in a squeezer, in a press, and you press it out, and what do you see? You see that the Torah said there's such a thing as the dignity of a human being. I predict that in 20 years, when you look up in a good dictionary the word dignity, next to it will be written archaic. They don't use it anymore. There's no such a thing. Dignity. The dignity of a human being. A human being is a pig in a pigsty. With shoe. Where to wash first. And they laugh at us. The Torah, you look in the Torah, you begin to look at the Torah. Sugyas and Shas. Sugyas and Shas, complicated Sugyas. So they accuse us of being involved in legalistic minutiae. They're blind! Exaggeration. So I went out into the hall of the hospital, and I see a messenger boy carrying a long thing that covered the whole width of the wall of the hospital, wrapped in cellophane. I didn't know what it was. Fella carrying. Couldn't figure out what it was he carrying it. Everybody's smiling. I go up closer to Hero Sandwich. The whole wall covered the whole wall. You hear? There wasn't a common chacham that ever. You ever see a restaurant? What is it? The problem of Polish ideas, where are we going to find it? You'll only find it in the Shas and in the Medrash and in the Chabal. From before the Renaissance, from medieval times. I don't know if you know history. You know what medieval times are? If you stepped out two steps out of the city, your life was in danger in the city. In medieval times, Europe was barbarian. Whole Europe was barbarians. All right, they had the guild, schmilds. You know, that was society. You know, with the princes, with the knights. You know, you meet King Arthur's round table. You think the knights were a bunch of cutthroat pirate murderers. The guilds were a little, accused of being, legalists. But the Torah understood that the only way to enlighten a person is not through through political processes, not through revolutions. The only way to reach the core of a person is through Torah, through an internal emes, through Torah. And the only way for a person to grow is to stand in a certain mindset of his mind, that a beam of light should go into his mind. If a beam of light doesn't go into your mind, then you're hot. Friends, see them, they're all standing around it. But people also sort of hold. Stay also sort of. I was talking about learning. Life is an adventure. Life is subtle. It's not gross. It's not black. It's not white. But if the man, the Gemara looks for the flaw. The Gemara doesn't say, what happened to him? Where was the flying noise? What happened to him? What caused that failure? It's amazing, the whole discussion in the Gemara was started by Chris. The Gemara discusses the songs that he used to sing when he was young. We're not afraid. The Gemara is courageous. The Torah is honest. The Shas is not afraid. Mamish, the biggest, most refreshing honesty. You gotta constantly look for that light. You have to constantly look for that understanding.